Civics, we know our clients are driven by the millions they serve. Our mission is to pair expertise with action to transform the public sector. Our solutions have a massive impact that we don't take lightly. And our name represents our civic commitment to offering the best tools, services, and support. Civics, public sector transformed.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. This is the NASS Elections Committee. We have muted all of you upon entry. We learned some hard lessons yesterday. And so if you want to speak, you're going to have to unmute yourself. If you do unmute yourself, please mute yourself again. I am going to turn the call over to Secretary Bookbar and Secretary Warner, both of whom I am unmuting right now. Go ahead, Secretary Bookbar.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the NASS Elections Committee. I'm Kathy Bookvar, Pennsylvania Secretary of State, and honored to serve as co-chair of this committee, along with my colleague, Matt Warner, West Virginia Secretary of State. As you all know, secretaries are assigned to this committee based on election responsibilities in their office. We have a lot of people joining us here today, and as Leslie mentioned, we learned a lot from yesterday about muting and unmuting. So Leslie is going to be the master of all ceremonies, and we know it does make it a little more challenging, obviously, to deliberate our committee business. But when you want to say something, please type your name into the chat feature, and Leslie will recognize you, and we will enable conversation. Committee members and proxies, if you want to speak up as we deliberate, please unmute yourself also. So Leslie's going to be following up on that as needed. Leslie, shall we start with recording the roll?
Yeah, we'll give it a whirl.
And by the way, if you're a proxy representing your secretary, please respond with present by proxy when your secretary's name is called. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to say your name and then wait a few seconds for you to unmute yourself. I will also go through the participant list on the side of the screen. So, all right, Secretary Condos, I'm going to mute you right now. Okay. John Merrill, Alabama.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Meyer, Alaska.
Here.
Katie Hobbs, Arizona.
Here.
John Thurston, Arkansas. Alex Padilla, California.
Present.
Jenna Griswold, Colorado. Denise Merrill, Connecticut.
Scott Bates by proxy, deputy.
Was that for, oh, Scott Bates, thank you, Scott. Laurel Lee, Florida.
Present.
Brad Raffensperger, Georgia. Lawrence Denny, Idaho.
Here.
Connie Lawson, Indiana.
Present.
Paul Pate, Iowa. Scott Schwab, Kansas. Michael Adams.
Present by proxy.
Oh, thank you. Michael Adams, Kentucky.
Present.
Kyle Ardoin, Louisiana.
See.
Matt Dunlap, Maine. John Wolbensmith, Maryland.
Here.
Bill Galvin, Massachusetts. Jocelyn Benson, Michigan.
Here.
Steve Simon, Minnesota. Michael Watson, Mississippi.
Yes, ma'am.
Jay Ashcroft, Missouri. Corey Stapleton, Montana. Bob Evnan, Nebraska. Barbara Sagafsky, Nevada. Bill Gardner, New Hampshire. Tahisha Way, New Jersey.
Present.
Al Jaeger, North Dakota.
Here.
Maggie Toulouse Oliver, New Mexico.
I am here.
Frank LaRose, Ohio. Bev Clarno, Oregon. Ellie Gorbea, Rhode Island. Steve Barnett, South Dakota.
Sorry, Leslie here.
Gotcha. Steve Barnett, South Dakota. Trey Hargett, Tennessee.
Here.
Ruth Hughes, Texas. Spencer Cox, Utah. Jim Condos, Vermont.
Here.
Tim Wyman, Washington.
Here, sorry, can't do it, unmute.
And Ed Buchanan, Wyoming.
Present by proxy.
Leslie, this is Steve Simon. I had some technical trouble, but I'm here.
Thank you. And like I said, I will also go through the participants on the side and check off anybody that I may have missed. Okay, we have a quorum, Madam Co-Chair.
Great, thank you. I'll turn it over. Secretary Warner, you want to give an introduction as well?
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Mac Warner, West Virginia Secretary of State. Honored to serve as co-chair with Secretary Bookbar. Our committee has 3 business items today. There are 3 resolutions scheduled for reconsideration. They can either be reauthorized in the current form or edited, or they can be allowed to sunset. I'm going to ask Leslie to walk us through each of the resolutions because she's the host of the meeting and has the power to mute us or to let us speak. We will address each resolution fully before moving on to the next. We have just over 1 hour to complete these 3 business items. Don't forget that we also have 2 workshops later in the afternoon that are election related. One on preparing for the November and increased turnout, and the second on information sharing for election security. You should have received separate login information for each of those workshops. So Leslie, back over to you. Why don't you take us through the resolutions?
Okay, so as Secretary Warner said, we have 3 resolutions. All of them are resolutions that are current and relatively long-standing. The first resolution I'll take up, and I think, there we go. Lindsay's going to share her screen with us so that we can see them. Okay, well, it was up there. Hang on one sec. So the 3 resolutions, one is on the EAC, one is on international election observers, and one is on the technology for military and overseas voters. I think Lindsay's screen has frozen again. Okay, so let me give a little bit of a background on the, is it frozen? EAC. Let me give a little bit of background first on the EAC resolution. So first passed in 2005, reauthorized in 2010, and then reauthorized again in 2015. Over the course of the years, that resolution has passed. Originally, it passed relatively unanimously. There were a couple of votes in opposition. The purpose of the resolution really was we were very concerned, the members were very concerned back in 2005 about the possibility that the EAC would ultimately get regulatory authority. The longer the EAC was in place, the more likely that they would get regulatory authority based on experiences that were referenced with the Federal Election Commission. And so the members back in 2005 decided to do this resolution. Then in 2010, it came up again. There were members that were concerned about the wording of the resolution, concerned about the perception of the resolution. And so we had a subcommittee of the Elections Committee go through and look at various options to rewrite the resolution. Ultimately, the subcommittee decided to keep the resolution as is. And I should note that the resolution was originally a letter to Congress. The content was basically the same, but it was not written in resolution form. It was written in a letter to Congress. In 2015, Secretary Gardner introduced this resolution as resolution language, as opposed to language that that was like a letter. So in 2015, we went through back and forth on the Elections Committee, and the vote was relatively divided, I would say. There were a couple of Republicans voting in opposition to, voting in support to allow the resolution to sunset, along with the rest, most of the Democrats, and the reverse for. There were a couple of Democrats that voted in support of the resolution, along with most of the Republicans. So we are now at 2020. Our resolutions are for 5 years. Because the resolution was, there was a divided vote in 2015. The members voted during the business meeting to allow the roll call of the vote to be included, because people wanted everyone to know that it was a divided vote. So here we are at 2020, and that's that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Leslie. So I guess what we even just in the last couple of years, we've had several discussions on this. At one point, we talked about the possibility of actually, ending the resolution, and there seemed to be consensus on instead just allowing it to sunset. So I guess I'd like to start out by asking if there's a motion from the body to allow this resolution to sunset.
I move.
I second.
Kim Wyman.
Madam Chair?
Sorry.
This is Maggie. I just have a quick question, Madam Chair. And I'm fine either way, but if we just took no action as a body, that would also allow it to sunset as well. Is that correct, Madam Chair? So, I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there, that perhaps maybe just taking no action at all. But if you want to continue with the vote, by all means, Madam Chair. I don't want to step on your toes.
I'm good with whatever. So next was going to be discussion. Leslie, would discussion be an appropriate place to talk about Secretary Plouffe-Oliver's question, or should we talk about it procedurally at the front?
So this has come up over the years as well. So I think it's probably best to reference for the minutes. That's the only way I'm able to go back and remember what's happened. So I think it's probably best for the minutes purposes to go through and hear that if the ultimate decision is to allow it to sunset, you don't have to vote to do that. But it's helpful to hear the discussion so that we have the record for that.
Does that work for you, Madam President-elect?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think we had a motion and we had a second. Is there any discussion?
Okay. So the motion is to sunset the resolution?
Correct.
Well, since I made the motion, I probably am supposed to say something. I For me, this has been a divisive vote since 2015 when we took it the first time. And of all of the votes I've taken in NASS, I would say it's the one that I regret. And so I think that in the 5 years that have passed and the spirited discussion we had 5 years ago, we have a different relationship with the EAC and just have a critical, I think, we have an opportunity to work together with a bipartisan organization. And I would like to see our organization be also bipartisan in how we approach things. So I just think that letting the sunset would be a good bipartisan move for us.
Thank you, Secretary Wyman.
And if I may say, yeah, I, as someone who was part of the crowd who tried to, basically sunset this much earlier, I agree. I don't know. I mean, I think the EAC has evolved and has really shown how it can provide a lot of really good research. I know that my office has really relied on the resources that they provide for information on what's happening across the states with regards to elections. And so I feel strongly that it should be allowed to just sunset, and let's go on to the work that we have to do for elections.
Thank you, Secretary Gorbea. Are there others, Leslie?
We can't hear you, Leslie.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. If anybody has any comments and they are and they want to enter them into the chat box.
I call the question.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Secretary Merrill. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Leslie, should we do anything, or was it a obvious enough result that we don't need to itemize?
If someone calls, if someone calls for a division of the House, then we have to do a roll call vote. Otherwise, I think we're good to go.
Anybody calling for a division of the vote? All right. Any abstentions? All right. Motion to sunset passes.
Okay. Next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Was somebody trying to speak? Okay. Next item is the NASS resolution supporting international election observers were allowed by state law and the NASS protocol for election observers. I should note that there's a typo. This was first adopted in 2005. It was revised in 2010, and which is why, for some reason, it's not referenced there. It was reauthorized in 2015. So international election observation, we have been dealing with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe since I've been here, since 2000. And every federal election year, they get an invitation from the State Department, the U.S. State Department, to invite international election observers to come as a part of the OSCE. The challenge that we have is we are not organized like a lot of other member countries of OSCE, because a lot of other member countries have sort of a centralized elections process, and when the central government invites somebody to come, the central government also coordinates that activity with the OSCE observers. And like I said, we don't have that. And so we have worked really hard over the course of the last 20 years to try to find an effective way to work with international election observers. It's worked better some years than others. And we, along with the resolution, we also passed a protocol which asked for a federal agency, namely the EAC, to help us to coordinate these observers, because in presidential election years, we're talking about hundreds of people going to all 50 states, and they were relying on NASS and NASA to help coordinate that activity. And, you know, for the longest time, we had 2 people here. So the EAC actually stepped up this year and offered to provide some assistance with coordination. Although I will say this year, I'm not sure how much international election observation is going to take place based on international travel, visas, coronavirus issues. So that's sort of a question that's out there. The challenge that we've had over the course of the last couple of years, at least from an organizing and coordinating standpoint, is that Russia is a member country of OSCE, which puts some states in a very difficult position for election observation. This year, OSCE said they wanted to send 400 short-term observers, which is usually around the week of the election, and 100 long-term observers, which is usually a month before the election. That does not count the Parliamentary Assembly, which also sends often hundreds of observers, and those folks are the equivalent of our members of Congress. And so there's a lot of people to coordinate. And like I said, the EAC has offered to help us with that this year. But that's sort of the history. I will also say that OSCE has had secretaries who have observed elections in foreign countries as part of their delegations from the United States. And so it has been a mutually beneficial arrangement, but that's where we stand right now.
So I think this is a similar thing. So it's really just a question about whether we want to allow this to sunset. And if, based on the conversations that I've had with miscellaneous folks, again, I think the idea in allowing this to sunset is not saying that any individual state can't go ahead and, encourage international observers, but rather whether as a resolution, we want to continue this standing resolution. So I guess we'll go through the same process. Do I have a motion on the table to allow this resolution to sunset?
So move.
Is that John Merrill?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Second?
Second, Michael Watson.
Thank you, Secretary. Is there any discussion?
Well,
Who is that?
This is Jenna Griswold in Colorado. Obviously, or maybe not so obvious, we support election observers, but I do think it's very important to not allow representatives of countries that are actively trying to undermine our democracy to have a carte blanche into states. So I think that's something very important that Leslie brought up, and I appreciate, Leslie, you bringing that up.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Secretary Merrill?
Secretary, I just wanted to say once again what an impactful experience it was for me and for my Deputy Chief, John Bennett, to go to Russia in September of 2016 as election observers, working through OSCE. However, the reason that I made the motion to sunset the resolution is because I think this is a decision that's best left to the states and to individual secretaries and their administrations as to whether or not they would like to participate. In Alabama, for example, even though I was able to go to Russia and participate in the international election observation, we could not reciprocate that relationship because we have a law in Alabama that prohibits anyone domestically or internationally from coming to our state to act as an election observer. For that reason, I think it's best left up to the states for them to do what they think is right and best for them.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion?
Scott Bates in Connecticut. And if I could, I worked in Kosovo after the war there on a State Department mission and worked with the OSCE on building democratic institutions in that country. So it's a great organization. If they send delegations to Connecticut, we'll welcome them. But I respect the sentiment of Secretary Merrill in Alabama. I just encourage everybody to keep engaging with international partners in democratic movements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, am I missing anything, Leslie? Okay, I see your head shaking. All right, I guess we'll proceed to a vote. Is somebody trying to speak? Interference. We'll proceed to a vote. All in favor of allowing to sunset, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Maggie. Madam Chair, this is Maggie. I'm abstaining. I'm just sort of agnostic on this whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President-elect.
Yes, I'll abstain. Scott Bates in Connecticut. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Maine, I'll abstain too.
Is that Secretary Dunlap? Thank you, sir.
Indeed, yes.
All right. All right, motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Just so you know, the feedback is when everybody unmutes to vote, so that just have to bear with it for a second.
Thought it was the Russians.
Okay. The final resolution, I can't believe I'm saying that at 2 p.m. Holy cow. All right, the final resolution is the NASS resolution urging the measured utilization of available technology and best practices in the security and conduct of elections, embracing the participation of military and overseas voters, UOCAVA voters. This resolution passed originally in 2010. It was shortly after the MOVE Act was passed in Congress, which called on the states to employ a lot more technology for the sending ballots and voter materials to military and overseas voters via technology. A state has to be able to do that electronically, but it left it up to the states to decide whether to receive those materials electronically back from the voter. And so this resolution was put in place to say, we think that's a good idea if it can be done securely. And at the time, there were some pilots that were being done by the Federal Voting Assistance Program. And some of the states actually took some of those pilots and ran with them. And so that's where this resolution came from.
Great.
It was reauthorized in 2015 as well. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
So similarly, this consideration is about whether we're allowing this to sunset. And it's, I think I could speak. I think we would vote unanimously. We all, have nothing but the strongest support for allowing military and overseas voters to vote, and constantly be exploring what options are available to make that better and expand that franchise. But the context within which this resolution was written may not exist in the same way as it did before. So I guess I'm seeking a motion again to allow this resolution to sunset.
Motion to sunset.
Was that Secretary Warner? Secretary Barrell?
Yes.
Sorry. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Secretary Lawson seconds it.
Thank you, Secretary Lawson. And is there a discussion? All right, am I missing anybody, Leslie?
Yes.
Great, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. Mac Warner, West Virginia.
Thank you, Secretary. Any abstentions?
Yes, Jim Condos.
All right, thank you, Secretary Condos. Anybody else?
I'm voting no. Jenna Griswold in Colorado.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. Anybody else?
No, Michael Watson.
All All right, thank you, Secretary Watson.
No, Secretary Hargett.
Sorry, Secretary Hargett, was that a no or an abstention?
That's a no.
Okay. Anybody else voting no?
I'm a no, Kathy.
Is that Secretary Way? Oh, Secretary Benson?
Michigan.
Okay, great. Secretary Way, are you also voting no? I see your hand.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm abstaining.
Okay. Did I miss anybody?
I will abstain as well.
Thank you, Secretary Wyman. Anybody else? Leslie, does the motion pass? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. And is that that's all the official business of the committee meeting?
I'm so beyond excited. I can't.
Well, I personally want to thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be co-chair of this committee during this fascinating year. And Leslie and your team, I really want to thank you all. I mean, we went from one way of doing business to suddenly having weekly elections committee meetings, and every week, you guys brought in important information. It was a great opportunity, I thought, for all the secretaries. It was tremendous participation from all the secretaries on these weekly meetings. And I have to say, for me personally, it was really helpful at just getting through these unique first-time experiences we were going through all across the country. So I want to thank all of my fellow secretaries for putting everything of themselves and their teams into making sure that every American has access to the vote and making sure we could do it in the safest, most secure way possible. So just a personal note, thank you.
I have a question. But so we're still going to continue those, right? The committee meetings?
Yes, ma'am.
Because they've been really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually are working on a couple of trying to set up a call with the Postmaster General in August. We'll be also setting up a call with OSCE in September for those who do want to have observers come. We're also setting up a call with the National Security Council in August and a call with Chris Krebs of CISA in September. Just trying to spread them out. I know that there's elections coming up in August, so we're trying to be judicious. But yes, we will continue those because they have been extremely helpful for us too.
Thank you. Secretary Warner, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I will just echo your comments from before. Thanks to Leslie and the entire NASS team. Thanks.
Great. Leslie, any other business? Or do we actually adjourn?
I think we adjourn. We have a couple of workshops this afternoon that are elections related. First on increased participation and how states are going to be handling it in November. And then also we have information sharing for elections coming up this afternoon, both workshops. I will also say on behalf of Secretary Jager that the Ideas Award and the Margaret Chase Smith Award ballots are due. If you have not voted yet, please turn those in by 5 o'clock this afternoon. And I think that's all.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everybody. And have a good, 25 minutes until we see you next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.